Beacon Press Audio presents A Surprised Queenhood in the New Black Sun, The Life and Legacy of Gwendolyn Brooks by Angela Jackson. This audiobook is narrated by Janina Edwards, published by Beacon Press Audio, 2017. I am moving. I am not still. I am ready to be ready. Gwendolyn Brooks, from the Near Johannesburg Boy. Chapter 1. Grant me a voice and speaking eyes. It was an indelible announcement, written in black and white for all to see. The first nationally published poem of Gwendolyn Brooks's appeared in American Childhood in October 1930, when she was only 13 years old. Earlier, at 11, she'd published 4 poems in a local neighborhood paper, the Hyde Parker, foreshadowing her brilliance. It was a brilliance that would shine through decades and across nations, bedazzling and impacting hundreds of poets and millions of audiences in all walks of life. Gwendolyn was a black teenager living on a quiet street in Chicago's Bronzeville neighborhood at 4332 South Champlain Avenue, where her family had lived since she was 4 years old. Bronzeville, the name coined by an editor of a black newspaper, the Chicago Bee, was named for the color of the area's inhabitants. In those days, Bronzeville proper stretched from 31st to 39th, and from State Street to Cottage Grove. It was a jewel of colored masses in a segregated space. The people were too often poor and illiterate, but they were also industrious and dignified, creative in music, language, dance, and style. They were the salt of the earth, and birds who managed to fly with cramped wings. Gwendolyn, ever observant, settled in to learn the ways of her people, the geography and genius of Afro-America. Hers was a protected space, guarded by father and mother. She and her brother Raymond were nurtured and shielded by their father, David Brooks, a janitor at McKinley Music Company, and by their mother, Kezia Wims Brooks, a former school teacher who had given up working in the classroom to guide her own children. Gwendolyn was loved. It was 1930 when she made her national debut. The world was just entering the Great Depression, but Gwendolyn didn't feel depressed. She was buoyed by dark ink on the pages of Writer's Digest, which she discovered at age 13. She reveled in the company of other writing souls who were on the same quest as she, to have their expressions published. She learned to send her work out, to include a self-addressed stamped envelope, so that it might be returned when it was rejected, for rejection would and did come. She sent poems and stories out. She got them back. Her desk was her headquarters. But one day the letter she had been waiting for, a letter of acceptance, did come. At that moment she was deliciously lightheaded and light-hearted. Her first poem, Eventide, was published in a national magazine. No doubt her family celebrated her. She basked in her first victory, her announcement to the world. When the sun sinks behind the mountains, and the sky is besprinkled with color, and the neighboring brook is peacefully still, with a gentle, silent ripple now and then, when the flowers send forth sweet odors, and the grass is commonly green, when the air is tranquilly sweet, and children flock to their mothers' sides, then worry flees and comfort presides, for all know it is welcoming evening. Of course, there were no mountains in Chicago, except for the mountains of clouds in the sky a young Gwendolyn was fond of studying, and no brook ran down Champlain Avenue. But Gwendolyn had learned, in her extended reading, about these natural wonders, and her imagination soaked up the solace of nature's beauty. Her experience in the Brooks household provided the template for the comforts of a welcoming home. She was a pretty girl in her darksome way, and she was in love. She was always in love. Words and books were the love of her young life. Who would have thought that a baby girl born to David and Kezia Brooks in the dining room of her grandparents' two-story single-family home at 1311 North Kansas Avenue in Topeka, Kansas, on June 7, 1917, would so soon become a published poet. Her parents, having migrated to Chicago earlier, had returned to Topeka for her birth. Gwendolyn was born during the Great War across the ocean, but she must have felt the reverberations of a world in conflict as she grew up. Negro soldiers were deemed unfit to fight by U.S. commanders, so they battled under a French flag and returned home as heroes. She would become used to the theme of war. She was in touch with it, even in her little corner of the world. Gwendolyn wrote poems a long time before she was published. She would sit on the top of the back steps and dream in poetry about the magic of sky and the mysteries of her future. She wrote a poem a day from the time she was 11, sometimes 2 or 3. She was devoted to her poetry because her mother believed in her ability, her gift for it. When she was 7, she showed her mother her page of rhymes. Her mother was overjoyed, excited at the possibility of a poetic daughter who would conquer the segregated world with elegant and eloquent language. She, a schoolteacher, knew how important it was to achieve in letters. "You're going to be Lady Paul Laurence Dunbar," Kezia Wemyss Brooks exclaimed. And Gwendolyn believed this because her mother had said it was so. Her mother would do all that she could to make it happen. For example, early on, Gwendolyn did not have to do chores. Then, later, she dusted, swept, did some laundry, and washed dishes. But her mother carried the work of the household. Her mother sang "Brighten the Corner Where You Are" as she went about her work for her gifted child. Gwendolyn, with pen in hand, brightened her own corner in her little room of her own. When she was in her early teens, her father gave her a desk of her own that he got from McKinley's. It was a desk full of compartments where she kept notebooks that she'd been writing in since she was 11, and special books like the Emily books, L.M. Montgomery's books about a Canadian girl who, like Gwendolyn, wanted to be a writer. Of course, she kept the complete Paul Laurence Dunbar. When Gwendolyn wasn't writing, she was reading. Even at Christmas, she read. She sat near the Christmas tree and reread the same book on that holy day, The Cherry Orchard by Marie Battelle Schilling, a gift from Keola Moore, her Sunday school teacher at Carter Temple Colored Methodist Episcopal Church. Gwendolyn would sit amid tinsel and gold under a star-topped tree and lose herself in the same book each year. Or did she find herself in the same book? Did she find herself in any story or poem? A vibrant, vivid, adventuresome self who taught her to live more confidently, at least in her mind? She only had a few friends on her short block. She was a dark-skinned girl at the time when being a decidedly dark girl was not the most desirable thing to be. Black people, worldly wise, sang, "If you're white, you're all right. If you're yellow, you're mellow. If you're brown, stick around. If you're black, get back, get back, get back." Gwendolyn understood the color code. She was bright that way. At the time her first poem was chosen for publication, she was not the most popular girl in any part of Negro society. But her self-esteem did not depend on others choosing her. She chose herself. Rejection hurt, but she had early on fallen in love with her own color because her parents, by their love of her and her brother, had taught her to love the totality of herself. On her block, Gwendolyn was known. Even if she spent most of her time in the house, in her room at her desk, writing poems and stories, and reading sometimes 2 books a day, she belonged. At school, it was a different matter. When she went to grammar school, to Forestville Elementary School, outside her immediate neighborhood, she encountered teasing every other day about her complexion. Her classmates called her "Old Black Gal." At the time, most of the kids believed everything black was bad.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?